Each year, Microsoft Research hosts hundreds of influential speakers from around the world, including leading scientists, renowned experts in technology, book authors, and leading academics, and makes videos of these lectures freely available.
Good morning. My name is Kevin Scofield. I'm General Manager of Strategy and Communications for Microsoft Research. I'm responsible for academic programs as well as technology transfer and PR and customer communications and licensing. And I actually sort of wish Rick Rashid, my boss, would have let me call myself the General Manager of everything else, because that's sort of pretty close to what I do for Microsoft Research. But it's a great pleasure for us to welcome you all here this morning for this Conference XP workshop. This is our fourth one. And now it's an annual event for us. It's been so successful and just keeps growing and growing for us. Actually, next year, our plan is to actually do this conference over Conference XP. Actually, this year, it's about 20% international participation. We want to continue to grow that because we think that international uses of Conference XP are going to be just the huge opportunity moving forward for this platform. And so, we're very hopeful. We're thrilled for the folks that traveled from outside the U.S. here today. We're hopeful to get even more international participation. We certainly understand that travel, logistics, and all of our other commitments are a huge constraint for all of us. So we're hoping that we can actually sort of practice what we preach and use our own platform to really sort of build the communities to the next level beyond this. But I'm very appreciative of all of your time for coming here and participating in this today. We're thrilled to have you here. We're actually recording this today. We're going to make it available next week in the research channel. Todd will get you more information about how you can all get at that information so you can share it with your colleagues as well. This is a super exciting time for Microsoft Research. We actually just celebrated about a month ago our 15th anniversary. We were founded in September of 1991. So this is a really, really big exciting time for us, an exciting year for us as well. We're now about 800 people in 5 labs in 3 different continents. Majority of our staff is still in Redmond, but we actually have a significant presence now, both in Beijing, China, and in Cambridge, England. And our 2 smaller labs down in Silicon Valley and in Bangalore, India, are just growing by leaps and leaps and bounds. We're now, you can sort of think of us as the world's largest computer science department. I know it's amazing to believe we're actually larger than Carnegie Mellon. Somebody out there could actually be larger than Carnegie Mellon. And we're still growing. We have about 55 different areas of computer science, ranging from the lowest levels of operating systems and networking and databases to the highest levels of sort of defining new kinds of user experiences and lots of things in between. Personally, one of the things I like about Conference XP is it sort of pulls together a lot of those different pieces into a larger scenario, which is about networking and displays, as well as about how we make an environment like this for learning environments really easy to use for people. So, I personally am really in interdisciplinary research. So seeing a project like this where we can really pull all these different pieces together just personally gets me really excited. The mission for Microsoft Research is very simple. It's 3 things. Number 1, advance the state of the art in each of the 55 or so different areas where we work. Number 2, get those into Microsoft products. And number 3, make sure Microsoft has a future. We actually, last month when we were preparing for the 15th anniversary celebration that we did, we actually went and did a tally of the papers that we published from Microsoft Research. And to our surprise, it was over 3,700 in 15 years. It sort of blew us away. That's almost 1 paper for every working day that Microsoft Research has been open since we founded it. Really just sort of blew us away at how big that number was. We didn't expect that at all. At the same time, we work really, really hard at the technology transfer part as well. In fact, at this point, as near as we can tell, every single Microsoft product that we ship today uses Microsoft Research technology. And we think that that's pretty significant for a research lab, particularly one that runs as much like a big computer science department as we do. And then the third part, making sure that Microsoft Research Microsoft has a future, is this really sort of interesting thing, and that's another place where we really think that we've been super, super successful. And to us, what that means is really thinking about how we can provide some level of agility for a company like Microsoft. Because if you ask Bill Gates or Rick Rashid or Steve Ballmer, what technology is Microsoft going to need? What new technology is it going to need 3 years from now? We couldn't tell you. we have some good guesses, but we couldn't give you the definitive list of that. Right? There's going to be some surprises over the next 2 to 3 years. But what we have in Microsoft Research with our 800 people is expertise across the breadth of technology, right? Expertise and technologies that we're continuing to advance. So when we turn that corner 2.5 years ago and discover, oh my God, we need this thing, minimally we have expertise. And we probably have technology in-house that we can apply to that really quickly. But beyond just sort of a specific need, as we're looking at analysis of those markets and understanding what our customer needs are going to be, what technologies are going to be important to solving them, we have people that we can bring to bear really quickly on problems. And we do that on a day-to-day basis in Microsoft Research in the way that we work with the executive leadership of the company, with various product groups around the company and around the world, to really look at how we can bring our best expertise very quickly to apply that. And sort of looking at that whole set of problems, it's been really interesting to me that our approach to managing Microsoft Research has really stayed very true to the academic model. Rick Rashid came to Microsoft from Carnegie Mellon University, and he only knew one model for how to run a research lab, and that was the academic model, where you hire in principal researchers, they hire junior researchers, and then you get out of their way, right? And you let them do great research. Right? You don't micromanage them. You don't tell them which research projects they should be doing. You really spend your time hiring the best people who have a proven track record of doing fantastic research and driving forward in the right directions and following their nose, and their nose is very sensitive to leading them in the right direction. And then you give them good institutional support, but you let them hold the reins and drive where it goes. And it's been a very successful model for us for 15 years across all 3 different parts of that mission statement that I told you about. Advancing the state of the art, getting technologies into products, making sure that the company has a future. And starting just simply with great talent that we could hire. When you look at folks like Rick Rashid himself, who was one of the co-authors of the Mach microkernel operating system, which is used in actually a number of commercial operating systems, say not only in principles but in code. There's actually code that Rick wrote in in Apple's OS 10. Kind of amazed every once in a while. He still hacks around with code a lot himself, and he's gone in occasionally on a Mac and found that actually all those Mach APIs are still available in there, and you can still program to them if you want. Beyond Rick, Tony Hoare in our Cambridge lab, Butler Lamson, Jim Gray down in our San Francisco lab. Actually, Andrew Yao, who just got the Turing Award a couple of years ago for his quantum computing work. And his computer science theory work is now working part-time in our Beijing lab as well. He moved over to Tsinghua University a couple of years ago, right after he got his Turing Award. And he's been doing some fantastic work in actually helping to start a theory group in our Beijing lab over there. We also have Chuck Thacker, who you may have seen recently in the news, is actually starting to work on creating a new hardware architecture group down in our Silicon Valley lab, not to do chip design as the New York Times said for some bizarre reason, but really to look at some of the new trends coming out of hardware, particularly looking at multi-core and how we program around that, how we might actually need to redesign the memory systems and the I/O channels in a computer as a whole, and how that affects the way we architect the software sitting on top of that, simply out of these basic trends that are changing the way computing is working. But one of the things that is really important to me is as we look at our external research and programs group and that whole effort as well, we really try it as much as possible to carry over that same philosophy, which is, it's not our role to say, here's, to dictate research projects that should be going on. We want to be able to find great people doing great things out in academia, and then give them some kind of institutional support. And we'll never be a National Science Foundation. We'll never be a big funding agency. We don't have that much money. We'll never have that much money to spend on funding research. But at the same time, one of the things that is an important distinction for me when I look at this is that those big funding agencies, National Science Foundation, DARPA, their equivalents around the world, they have large amounts of money, but they're very, very conservative in terms of the kinds of things that they fund. They really don't take a lot of risks at all. And I think that there's a good complementary role for us in not giving as much money to any particular project, but doing two things that I think are important. One, finding great ways where we can hook up researchers in academia with our own researchers in Microsoft Research and building collaborations around that. But also taking risks, being able to sort of do some angel investing and seed some funding out for things that a National Science Foundation or DARPA would never touch until you actually see some research results. Well, if we can partner with you and help you sort of get to the point where you can start to see some results around a riskier project and then set you up for success in being able to go to a larger funding agency, we think that's a really good complementary role. So rather than try to do the same thing that a big funding agency would do, we're trying to see if there's sort of a good complementary role that we can provide that sort of fills out this ecosystem a little better. So, and as always, we'd love to hear your feedback about whether that's working for you or not, or ways that we can sort of change what we're doing to make that a better thing for you and a better complementary role. Because this is research, and we're all sort of taking risks and experimenting and trying to figure out how we can move things forward and do better. And feedback is super, super important to us. So we hope you'll share that with us. I actually think Conference XP is a great example of something where this has worked. And I guess it's about 5 years ago where we really started this Conference XP effort, and it looked pretty risky, right? We were taking big bets on assuming bandwidth is really going to explode, assuming displays are going to get cheaper, right? Computation is going to continue to move, computational ability is going to continue to move forward. And how do we start pulling these pieces together? It looked like this big risky thing 5 years ago. And now you look today, and it's really all coming true, right? The big trends. You look at bandwidth, you look at computation. I'll come back to that in a minute. You look at displays and how they're getting much larger and much cheaper. And you look at storage and just the explosion in storage. I went out and actually bought a new hard disk, and one of the sort of benchmarks I look at is how much does it cost to buy a terabyte of disk space? Right, terabyte of disk space is now under $500, right? And just to sort of make that crisp in people's minds, in a terabyte of disk space, you can have an audio recording of your entire life, right? You can have a video recording of an entire year of your life. You can take a picture a minute for your entire life and store it in a terabyte of disk space, right? We're now in the age, what Rick Rashid calls human scale storage, what I just call simply the age where we don't throw things away anymore, right? But that's an amazing enabling technology for something like Conference XP, right? Where the size of these things that we're trying to capture and store really is irrelevant anymore because the storage has just gotten super, super cheap. And I think that's a really important thing. But if we can sort of capture that now over 5 years and turn this into sort of right at the inflection point we're at with Conference XP, where it's not simply a bunch of small research projects, but really a community, a worldwide community of people who can collaborate together, not only sort of on the technology, but looking beyond that to what I think is super, super exciting, which is the content opportunities here, right? And as we travel around the world, and I was just in China last week, I'm going to Europe next week, and talk to people in the research community around the world, there are some very common themes that I hear. One, there just simply aren't enough teachers to go around. There's a lot of excitement about computer science. In some parts of the world, enrollment in computer science is going up, in other places it's going down. There's excitement about the advances happening in computer science all over the world, but there aren't necessarily great teachers. There aren't great faculty everywhere where we want them around the world, right? And this, actually extends beyond that to the educational community as a whole, where there just simply aren't enough instructors for all the people that we want to teach skills and knowledge that we think are going to be important in the 21st century, right? How do we share the great lectures and the great content? How do we build a community around that where we can really take the best wherever it is and get it to the people who need that information and need that knowledge and skills, right? I think there's a huge opportunity and a great inflection point around Conference XP right now, not just the technology, but also on the content side. And it's an opportunity for all of us to build a community to help pull that content side of it together as well, because they really not only complement each other, but they reinforce the value of each other. And we're seeing examples of it right now. Today along the west coast of the United States, there are 5 universities that are offering a single joint course in topics around computer science, where they're pulling the best lecturers from each of those different campuses together into the schedule. And students at every single one of those campuses are sharing the lectures. It's all scheduled at the same time every week, and lecturers can lecture from any of those campuses and be seen in all the other campuses. We did a project in the last year, just kicked off in Australia, where a set of rural schools have set up actually through a satellite network. They're actually sharing courses and sharing instructors across a number of schools where they could just simply never hire the teachers where they want them in these very far-flung rural schools in Australia. So, you know, as I talk to people in India and China, I hear similar enthusiasm, as well as Latin America, similar enthusiasm for really getting out there and finding ways where we can share the best and brightest faculty that we have and unite countries, unite universities and campuses, and really start to pull people together. You know, I think this is important for us in Microsoft Research as well, you know, on the content side as well. We're a very big believer in the open research community, in the intellectual commons. You know, we've been trying to practice what we preach, and I've been a strong advocate for this internally in Microsoft, where the visiting lectures that we have in Microsoft Research, we actually capture those lectures now and put them out on the research channel. We've outfitted both of our lecture rooms as well as a couple other rooms within our own facility with Conference XP, so we can start to really generate a lot more content. One of the metrics in my mind that I'm going to push all of you year after year after year as we build this community is how many hours of content is there out on Internet 2 using Conference XP? If somebody really wanted to go install a Conference XP node, how much content does that plug them into? And how do we get ourselves organized to the point where month after month, year after year, that number is increasing? Because that's really one of the key things that's going to make this community and this effort explode and become a much larger and much more valuable thing. Partly that's sort of Metcalfe's law of the number of connection points on a network. The square of that number is the value of that network. I don't think has ever really cast that in terms of the amount of content that's available. Well, we're going to have to think very seriously about how we connect that in to our own valuation of this, as you want to encourage more people to get plugged into this. This is a super exciting time in computer science. And you know, I mentioned the four sort of areas that I think are really driving this explosion right now. Bandwidth, computation. Computation is an interesting one because it's not just sort of simply Moore's law doubling the clock speed every 18 months anymore, right? We've really hit, a key right turn, a 90-degree turn there, where now what we're hearing from Intel and AMD and the other big chip manufacturers is they can't increase the clock speed anymore. They can't have enough heat dissipation in the chips in order to do that. So they're all going to multi-core, right? Which means that we're going to get almost overnight an explosion of computational power, but it's going to be in very discrete packages. And as we look at architecting systems like Conference XP, it's a great opportunity because in environments like this, we want to be doing lots of different things. We want to capture and encode or decode lots of different streams of content at the same time. We want to be able to do interesting manipulations around them. We want to have computation where we can do automatic directors with camera pans and changing between cameras, as well as other kinds of feeds out to content as we, within classroom environments, connect different kinds of devices together. That's all computation. We're going to have to think about how we make those independent sets of computation that are all going on simultaneously, because those are the architectures that we're going to be dealing with in this environment. That's a great research problem. Every single one of these is a great research problem that makes this a fantastic research platform to continue to build on. I mentioned storage before as well. In a sense, to me, this is sort of a perfect storm for Conference XP. All the right things have come together at the point where this is just a super exciting and very engaging time to be working in this kind of environment. It gets me excited every day about coming into work and looking at different things that we can do with Conference XP. Todd will tell you that I'm in his face on a regular basis, saying what can we do more with this platform? How can we sort of support the right people out in academia who are going to make great things happen with it around the world. In many ways, even 5 years into this, I think we're just getting started in what we're going to be able to do. But I'm super excited. I think this is going to. I think Conference XP and all the work that you're doing on it is going to have a huge impact. And I'm personally just looking forward to seeing all the great things you're going to do with this. Before I get out of your way and let you get on the platform, the workshop today, I just actually want to take a moment to thank Todd and Carla and Brian and the rest of the staff of actually organized this. Those of you who've put on a workshop or an event know that it's an enormous amount of work behind the scenes to do this. The three of them and the other supporting staff in Microsoft Research have put an enormous amount of work into doing this. And I just want to just personally thank them for doing that, because without that, we wouldn't all be here today. So, thank you.
Thank you.
And I'll just end with thanking you once again for all making the time to be here and being a part of this. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Todd and have a great workshop.